This conference will now be recorded.
Mr. Chair, we have 1 more minute to go, and we have a quorum at the moment, but 3 o'clock is still a minute away.
Very good. That's news.
Thank you.
Chairman?
Yes.
We do have, I see at least one new member today, and potentially if Commissioner Lopez is joining us. So I don't know if there's I know it would maybe be hard to introduce everyone, but even to have them introduce themselves or whatever your preference, but just a friendly reminder.
Well, thank you. All those icons are very small. So Jared Cirillo's on.
Yep, I'm here. Thank you, Commissioner Dennis.
Very good. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is now 3 o'clock. We do have a quorum. I'd like to call the meeting for Tuesday, April 13th for the WAMPO Transportation Policy Board to order. I want to welcome all of our regular members, and also we have 2 brand new members that will be serving today. One from the city of Wichita, Jared Cirillo, brand new city councilman. Welcome, Jared. And the other is Sarah Lopez, a new county commissioner. So I want to welcome both of those members to attend today. It looks like we have 36 people, so this is becoming a fairly popular meeting. Welcome, everyone. As I said, I've called the meeting to order. First item, item 2A, is the approval of the agenda for today. I make a motion that we approve the agenda for April 13th. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Next is to approval of the minutes. Everyone has had an opportunity to review the minutes from March 9th. I make a motion that we approve those minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, there was one edit that we received from our Rick Backlund from Federal Highway Administration. So there's one edit in the meeting minutes on to have Rick Backlund on our members in the attendance. If there are any other edits, we'll be happy to incorporate those. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Well, with that discussion, anyone have any questions on the minutes? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. See no one opposed. Yeah, the minutes with the explanation. Next item is 2C, the chairman's report. Actually, under 5A, I'm going to make the majority of my discussion. But the thing that we want to talk about under 2C is membership. And at the last meeting, if you recall, Jane Burns made a request about having a citizen serve on the TPB. We did have our attorney review this, and I'm going to turn it over to Kelly Rundell. Kelly, I believe you're on.
I am. Thank you very much. I did some research and determined that both the United States Code and the Code of Federal Regulations define what membership, who can be a member of a metropolitan planning organization, and those are local elected officials, because you represent the public as a whole, officials of public agencies who administer and operate major modes of transportation, and then appropriate state officials. And that's defined in both lists. There is no authority for you to expand your membership to include other types of people. So the idea that there could be a citizen at large membership would be inconsistent with the federal law.
Kelly, I appreciate the update and thanks for bringing that up at our executive committee meeting. Does anyone have any questions about the discussion that Kelly Rundell just brought up as a response of Jane's request? Seeing none, we will move on to item 2C2, the director's report. Chad, it's over to you.
Mr. Chair, thank you so much. Members of the Transportation Policy Body, good afternoon, everyone. As your secretary, I have 3 items to report today. The first one is overview of today's meeting in general. Today we have, as you can see in the agenda, we have City of Derby presenting their growth patterns, both in land use and transportation, and its plans to connect with the region. And also we have regional economic trends and industrial growth trends presentation by Andrew Nave, who is with our Greater Wichita Partnership. These series are meant to have a closer understanding of our region, as most of you already know about the region, but having this unified vision for the transportation plan development, these series are presented. I would like to take this opportunity to also share with you that there is a potential for awards for the best jurisdiction who has best efforts to connect with the region sometime in December 2021 or beginning part of 2022. These awards event are still in planning stages, but I would like to share with you that staff may request jurisdictions with a summary report of the presentations, so we can submit all those to the TPB members, and at some point TPB members may take a vote on the best jurisdiction making best efforts to connect with the region. As part of this, the staff also included in your packets on page 8, 9 the population growth trends. It's really, most of you already know these trends, how the cities and jurisdictions have population growth and what's the existing population as of 2019, the data that's most currently available. As you can see, it's sorted, City of Wichita, 389,938 on page 9. Second in our region is City of Derby with a population of 24,943. Third sorted in our region is City of Andover with 13,405 population. Next, fourth is City of Hayesville with 11,338. And fifth in our sorted is City of Bel Air, 8,300. City of Park City, 7,764. And Valley Center, Mulvane, and City of Maize with with a population of 4,934. And we have seen Maize presentation last month. Staff would like to thank Maize. It was an eye-opening presentation. The pride that Maize shared in the development patterns was just amazing and eye-opening. That's just an overview for you what the series of presentations are, and as a region, the new members may benefit from these series of presentations as well. And also in the long run, having this unified vision for transportation, sometimes it's just in the plans and the books, but these presentations help us being on one page with this dialogue ongoing. So thank you for that. So let me go to the second item, and if you have, let me pause for a moment if there's any clarification needed on the first item. Okay, thank you. The second item here is in your packets. It's on page 11. As you know, staff reported in the last couple of months, the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, CRSA funds, it's called as CRRSAA abbreviations. As we get into federal funds, we get to see a lot of abbreviations and acronyms. This is one of the new ones. I think our Kdot partners, our Mike Moriarty, our Rene Hart, and Todd Salfrank and Matt McDonald, they were very helpful to not only WAMPO staff but for all the MPOs in state of Kansas. And we had and they were forthcoming in explaining how the eligibility of these funds are changing every day, and the information is coming with respect to frequently asked questions, with respect to what type of projects are eligible for these funds. So because it is changing constantly, I requested Todd, Salfrank, and Mike, and Renee, and so they were gracious enough to have all the team members for this meeting. This is one of the nice things about the TPB meetings. We have many partners, an opportunity to meet and share the most updated information. So I would like to request Todd or Matt McDonald's to let us know the eligibility of these. And we know the timeline of these funds on page 11, but I would like to request Todd or Mike Muriel or Matt.
Yeah, this is Matt McDonald. I wish it were as simple as you'd like it to be. We keep getting changing directions and everything from our people on high also. I've been waiting for the Q&As to pass legal review so I could share them with people for probably a month now.
Okay. Sounds good, Matt. Good. Sounds good.
It's not as simple as I would like it to be. If you have specific questions, I've asked some questions from headquarters concerning paying staff, and I have some answers on that we can talk about. We've talked about, that if you have projects that you have, we can do some things on that. Specific questions are a lot easier for me to reach out to headquarters and get answers to than right now waiting for the broad overall guidance.
Okay, let me work in progress. So let me ask a couple of questions, Matt. As we develop the Metropolitan Transportation Plan that is due every 5 years, and the TPB members approve and adopt, there is one component to the transportation plan the staff works on, that is developing a financial constraint plan. The projections of the financial funding for the next 20 years and the number of projects and the cost estimates are within that financial projections. It's one important technical appendix that is needed. What I would like to know is there are some MPOs when there are more projects than the projected funding, those projects are listed as illustrative list where they're outside the financial constrained list. So my question is, are those list of projects that are outside the financial constraint eligible for these funds or not?
Well, the question I guess I would say is, does the new money we got change our financial constraint? If there's 5 million and we weren't planning and we need to move it in, then I would say we can. I'll actually need to ask some planners. I'm not a planner by trade. I'm a financial manager. So I'll need to talk to some people about the specifics on the planning rules. But my initial take would be, you've just come into whatever it is, 4 million, 3 million that you weren't planning. So how does that change our fiscal constraint?
Okay. We will.
So there's projects that are in the MTP that aren't in the TIP right now that we think we would like to spend this money on. Okay. So let me find out about that.
Thank you, Matt. One other question is, as you know, the WAMPO has some financial solutions that WAMPO is also paying the loan to City of Wichita. Would any of these funds be utilized towards gaining the financial stability of WAMPO or not? Of course, the projects also the financial stability only needs a little bit, not a whole lot. There is 3.7 million. There's only 250 to 300,000 that. So that is another question we can explore. And I recently learned that trails can also be utilized, these funds. So I will explore some more. We are talking to Todd and you.
Okay. Yep. If you want to have a conversation offline and kind of go over it, let me know specifically what you're looking for. There's some specific rules around debt and if it's going to be used. One of the key things in all of this is it has to be for highway infrastructure. We have to be able to tie it to that because the CRISA funds are basically authorized under the original ARA and Highway Infrastructure Program funds. It's kind of the overall guiding large picture law behind it. So that was the first thing that came down from headquarters. We have to be able to tie it to highway infrastructure.
Great. Great, thank you, Matt. The same, what Matt mentioned is summarized on page 11, where the status update, how these funds can be utilized and how these are eligible. We already knew that it is same way as TIP projects that become eligible for federal funds. But beyond that, what other possibilities are, Matt is gracious and Mike Moriarty, all the team members for working with us, and the information is changing, and we'll report to you back soon again. Members, do you have any questions at this time we can work on or address and bring back to you? Okay. Thank you. So can I, if no questions, then I'll go to the third item. Thank you. And also for your information, there is page number 22, 21, 22, 23. You can 24. That also gives a glance at how other MPOs have received, across the nation, how various MPOs have received these CRISA funds. That's informative for you. That I pointed out as well. The next item is a quarterly activity report. I think on page 38 as well. It's a summary of quarterly staff tasks and activities summary. Just to give you a high-level summary of what's going on, staff is working on transportation improvement program amendments, TIP projects, TIP amendments. Working with Kdot is important for this year to be on schedule, and also audit work is also important for the staff. So staff is busy with these two items. In the next couple of months, staff would like to visit each of the jurisdictions to learn more about the growth trends and the data and the future transportation corridors each jurisdiction has. So we'll schedule meetings with each of you in the next couple of months as well. So that's just a summary of these three items today. So if there are any questions, happy to elaborate. Otherwise, Mr. Chair, it's back to you.
Well, thank you, Chad. I appreciate the update. Does anyone have any questions whatsoever on the director's report? Very good. We'll move on to item 3, which is public comments. Does anyone want to speak on public comments? And you'll probably have to speak up. We now got 49 people on, and I can barely see each one of you. So anybody have public comments? Seeing no public comments, we'll move on to item 4, new business. One of the things that I appreciate that Chad set up last month, we had a great briefing by the City of Mays, and Councilwoman Tuttle and I believe that those are very valuable for all of us. So what I asked Chad to do is to start scheduling other communities to do the same thing. And today we're very happy that we've got Derby on board and Don Squires and Scott Knable. So I will turn it over to them. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm Scott Knable with the City Planner for City of Derby, and behind me here is Dan Squires, Planning and Engineering Director for City of Derby. I'm going to start the presentation off, and then I'm going to end with the walkability plan, and then I'm going to get up and walk and let Dan walk over here and finish the rest of our presentation. So I'm going to talk about our growth patterns and how Derby is anticipating to grow, and then Dan's going to talk to you about the individual projects that are important to this region, and we'll be discussing going forward with WAMPO in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan and the TIP. So Derby, as was mentioned, is one of the larger communities in the WAMPO region, the second largest, and our most recent population forecast is a forecast that goes through the year 2040. It was recently adopted in our Vision Derby 2040 plan. We're presently about 25,000 people, and we're anticipating to grow about 11,000 or 12,000 people in the next 20 years to a population of about 36 or 37,000 by the year 2040. And so that's all what I'll show you in a minute is the planning area that we are planning for. In terms of what Derby is like, Derby is a pretty typical community, although we do have a little bit more owner-occupied housing than the nation or the state in general, and a little bit less renter-occupied housing, and then our vacancies are significantly less, and that leads to some issues that we have. You can see in the bottom of the chart, we do have some shortages in really two areas as it relates to our housing, and it's interesting shortages to have. We have shortages in the most affordable housing for those people who are in an income range of 0 to 25,000, and then we have a pretty significant shortage at the upper end of our residential neighborhoods, and something that we're struggling with in terms of course, that's a housing market that a lot of developers want to get into because the profits are higher. And we have meetings with those developers on a pretty regular basis about, where are my opportunities to develop housing in Derby? And we are struggling with finding places where we can provide a full range of economical municipal services to support housing at this upper end. And then you can see in the middle of this chart, we actually have excess of the number of units that we need for some income ranges. Derby is a higher end income community. You can see that our median household income is significantly higher than the state of Kansas, as well as the metro area and the nation as a whole. And you can see that we have a very large percentage of our households that are in the highest income bracket. 30% of our households are in that highest income bracket. Our employment is like the Wichita metro region. We are very heavily reliant on manufacturing for our employment base, and of course our proximity to the Spirit complex is a big reason for that. We also have a large number of people that are employed in educational services, because one of the strengths of Derby is our Derby school system, one of the larger school systems in the state, and we have and our largest employer of people that are actually working in the city of Derby. And then much of the health and retail trade, many of those people are working both locally as well as in the greater Wichita area. And you can see our total workforce as of 2018 is about 12,000. I actually have a recent update to that that takes it a little bit above 13,000. This is a map that shows commuting patterns. It has Derby, Andover, Hayesville, and Mays on it. This was part of a study that was sponsored through WAMPO, in which those 4 communities participated along with Wichita Transit. to kind of figure out where people are living in comparison to where they're working. And you can see that about 9,000 daily trips from Derby go to Wichita and back on a daily basis. We have about 5,000 people who are coming from Wichita into Derby to work on a daily basis, and then very few, 1,500 of our workers actually live and work here. So we're very much a bedroom community in that sense, in that most of our residents work in Wichita, and then we have a lot of particularly service and retail jobs where we have people who are living in areas where there's more affordable housing available, actually coming to Derby to work in our businesses. And you can see a little bit of information about where those destinations are. You can see some of the major employers in Derby are in kind of our downtown area, which is in the lower left portion of Derby, and then along our Derby Marketplace or Rock Road corridor, which is in the eastern portion. And then you can see the big circle there for Spirit, the big circles for downtown Wichita, big circles for the airport area, and then quite a few people working in the northeast part of Wichita as well. And then you can see where people are coming from. They're coming from all over the Wichita metro region to come and work in Derby. So this is our planned growth. This is the comprehensive plan that we just recently adopted. And there's a lot of information on this that probably I can't explain in the brief amount of time that I have to address you, but a couple of things to focus on. It doesn't really show very well, but the kind of the center of the map is Rock Road running north and south. And that's our primary commercial corridor. The red and pink on the map is showing our planned business growth areas, both north and at the north end and the south end of our planned growth area. And what we're anticipating is a kind of a new style of development that is, there's been some examples of it in the Wichita area. Andover is doing a little bit of this as well, called mixed use development, where we would have both residential and commercial uses in the same development. They'd not be separated from one another. It will encourage people to walk from where they reside to the places where they do business. And we anticipate that that type of development would occur along the Rock Road corridor. Another of the major features on here is that you see some green lines that run north and south on this. The piece that is east of Rock Road, kind of in the eastern half of the picture, is our planned new north-south circulator that's called the Derby Grand Tour that Dan's going to talk about. You can also see the light blue areas on the east side of our growth pattern. That is major watershed areas where we have large floodplain that has made the Webb Road corridor in the Derby area not traversable. And so we have to find a different way to provide north-south circulation. So that's one of the items that is, from a transportation standpoint, that we will be focusing on quite a bit. And then the final item I'm going to talk about before I turn it over to Dan is the Walkable Development Plan. This was done in partnership with WAMPO. WAMPO helped us fund this plan. And there's a lot of information in this plan. And I think the subcommittee of WAMPO has received a more detailed presentation on this. But the key focus here is that we've identified some priority corridors for us to improve biking and walking. And you can see what those are: Rock Road, Buckner, Patriot, Meadowlark, Madison, as the areas where we need to focus our efforts. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan, and Dan is going to talk about the transportation connections.
Good afternoon. I am Dan Squires. I'm the Director of Planning and Engineering here at the City of Derby. I have been involved with WAMPO since about 2004. I started on the Technical Advisory Committee at that point and remain on what's now the Transportation Advisory Committee. So in that time frame, we had a K-15 reconstruction project. It was a traditional Kdot project that got moved to an MPO project as a result of the 2000 census, when a lot of the smaller communities were added to the MPO. That kind of changed a lot of our worlds. We've certainly learned a lot about the requirements for federal transportation planning. Our access to federal funds was certainly more complicated as a result of that. So, in that time, I've had a opportunity to work on a lot of projects. Some of my favorite projects, and I'm just going to go through a few of our WAMPO projects that we've done. We've partnered with Sedgwick County recently on 2 bike path projects in recent years. These are actually over about the last 5 years. The first was aviation pathway. So walkability has always been a big priority in Derby. We've got over 25 miles of hike and bike paths in our community. We've required sidewalks on both sides of the roads in new developments since the mid-90s. So we've got a lot of walkability that we're really proud of. We built a lot of bike paths, but as a result of a study that the WAMPO did, the focus started to become on connecting communities with bike paths and not just connecting internal sites. So Aviation Pathway was an opportunity to partner with Sedgwick County and connect Derby's bike path system to Wichita. It ran into some challenges. It's a pretty complex project. It's got some barriers like K15 to get across. And the final piece of that is being constructed now. So that's phase 3 shown in green. And then all of Derby's bike path network will be connected to Wichita's bike path network. Similarly, we partnered with Mulvane in Sedgwick County to construct the Mulvane pathway. It's complete. It was completed late last summer. It's been a very successful project. You can go out almost anytime you want to and see people walking from Derby to Mulvane. So that then connects Mulvane's bike path network to Derby's bike path network, easy for me to say, which now connects to Wichita's bike path network. So you can go all the way from Mulvane into Wichita's network on bike paths. So we're very proud of that. This one in particular also goes by Dekarsky Park, which was not planned at the time we started planning the Mulvane pathway, but is nice access for Mulvane. Dekarsky Park includes a dog park. So people from Mulvane, if they want to, can get on the bike path system, walk their dog to Dekarsky Park, enjoy the park, and walk back. So another project we partnered with Wichita on, had been in the long range plan and then was moved into the TIP, was Whichway ITS, which added the K15 corridor to Whichway. So we've got cameras and access now and direct message boards along K15. That was done with WAMPO funding and in partnership with the city of Wichita. Patriot Avenue and K15 turn lane is a major transportation corridor for us. Our primary existing corridors are just like Scott said, getting to and from Wichita mostly, getting people to work here and getting our people to work there. There's a heavy traffic demand for people to get onto K15 in the morning and go northbound. What we experienced years ago was that when there was a train on the BNSF Railroad along K15, one through vehicle would hold up everybody who wanted to turn right to go north on K15 to go to work. We reconfigured the outside lane to be a right turn only lane, but that results in an excessive stacking in the remaining through lane. So this project adds a right turn lane and bids in April. So we're very excited about moving that project forward. A new project that we've just started the design on, that just got added to the TIP, is Nelson Drive realignment. This is the part of a redevelopment effort for the area at 63rd Street and K15. It's a very underutilized old industrial area. It's got large lots. It's encumbered by the accident potential zone from McConnell Air Force Base. So you can't get traditional B3 or commercial development, retail space. High population densities are not encouraged in that zoning. There's a Menards just off the screen to the right that will be built in the next year or so. So we're expecting a lot more traffic in that area. So this is a great project. We're expecting the preliminary design report here in the next few weeks. That's the first phase of that. So very exciting WAMPO project there that really has the opportunity to change the complexion of Derby and add some flex space and other opportunities. Rock Road from 55th Street to Freedom is in the long-range transportation plan. That's just an extension of a major commercial corridor for us that connects Derby to East Wichita. That's a major commuter route. And as we've grown, historically converted that to an urban standard. The Derby Grand Tour, Scott mentioned, is a parkway system that is not just the north-south collector that Scott mentioned to provide a transportation link. It's also intended to be a parkway system that's kind of a statement and connect our parks and green spaces throughout the city. There is some indication in our comprehensive plan too of taking existing corridors and upgrading them so that there's a parkway system that connects many of Derby's premier green spaces together. Patriot Parkway is a concept out of our comprehensive plan that takes 63rd Street through Derby, which is slightly overbuilt, and utilizes some of that space to create a unique new space. An additional priority for the city of Derby is transit. There's been a lot of discussion, I think, with some of the suburban communities about extending Wichita Transit to serve the suburbs and get people to and from Derby. I think those conversations are ongoing, but it's still a priority to us. We did do a quiet zone study a couple of years ago. There's been a lot of attention drawn to that by Bill Plain's recent publicity of theirs being implemented. So we've got a quiet zone study. Those are pretty complex to do, but it's on our radar, and our next steps are looking, hopefully in the next few years, to be able to implement some of those recommendations and move towards creating a quiet zone along K15 in Derby. So probably Derby's number one, well, I shouldn't say probably, Derby's number one transportation priority is ARC 95. This began with the South Area Transportation Study that was done in 2008 by WAMPO that identified a need for a good east-west corridor in southern Sedgwick County. That study indicated that by 2030, we could expect the existing river crossings to be at capacity. There's several other transportation studies that have been done since then. A Meridian study, a casino transportation plan, and a Broadway study that all kind of made the same recommendations and referenced ARC 95 as a need. There's no bridge crossings of the Ark River south of 83rd Street until you get to K53 in Sumner County, and there's no grade separated crossing of BNSF Railroad south of Kellogg. So there's some major transportation barriers that create a little bit of a lack of east-west connectivity to connect communities in southern Sedgwick County. The project includes a fully directional interchange at K15. That's grade separated over both the railroad and K15 highway. So that's fully grade separated and fully directional. The benefits of it are that it enhances safety and emergency response. It improves traffic flow, mitigates future congestion. As I mentioned, the SAT study in 2008 predicted that by 2030, the existing bridge crossings of the Ark River would be reaching their capacity. Additional, we've seen consistent increases in the amount of train traffic on BNSF Railroad. So being able to get freight and people and emergency services across the railroad in those situations is becoming more and more of a priority. It improves multimodal access. It's obviously an acceleration of economic development. Most of the communities in southern Sedgwick County do have industrial parks, but do not necessarily have good access to the turnpike. And that project did include a turnpike interchange. It is not cheap. It's $62 million for phase one. That's the guts of it. That's the bridge and the interchange pieces of it. That's $12.3 million in design and $49 million in construction. But just to put that in perspective, for a major infrastructure improvement, $62 million is kind of a bargain compared to what you have to pay for some. And part of that is that it's a new corridor, and if you get out ahead of it, you can build the project before right-of-way becomes excessive. As you can see, the total right-of-way cost is only estimated at $700,000. So phase two is about $24 million, and that includes a KTA interchange at 95th Street. So that's not just Derby's priority. There's been a lot of conversation with other communities in the area. They all support ARC 95. As a matter of fact, in the last budget cycle, most of these communities started setting aside funds that might be necessary to move that project forward. Often, if you're applying for a Tiger grant or something like that, you end up hiring a consultant that knows that process and that application process and what is successful in those better than we do as locals. And so the communities that are interested in it have started setting funds aside to address some of those upfront costs that may be necessary to look for grant funding. So again, Derby's transportation priorities from regional significance standpoint definitely are K15 and Rock Road as existing corridors and ARC 95 in the future. So, and I think Scott or I would be happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Well, Dan, Scott, thank you very much for the briefing. Does anyone have any questions for either Dan or Scott? I don't see any questions right now, but I appreciate that Chad came up with the idea to do these briefings because as we look at regional significant items that impact the entire WAMPO region, we need to know exactly what the different communities are doing and what their priorities are and how that it all fits into our overall plan for WAMPO. So I think these briefings are very valuable. I hope everyone else agrees with me. We do plan on continuing them as we go throughout the year. So again, I want to thank very much for Derby for making this latest briefing.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Next item is the status of the audit. One of the things that Councilwoman Tuttle and I do each month is the week after this meeting, we always get together with Chad and go over what the outcome of this meeting was, and we prepare for the following week for us to have the executive committee meeting. But one of the things that's come up the past couple times is the status of the audit, and the executive committee has been briefed on where we're at on this, but we thought that we really need to get this before the entire WAMPO TPB. So what we've asked is AGH team, Mike and Michelle, to come and give you a little bit of an update on where we're at with the audit. As you recall, the audit didn't look very good last time. We're in the midst of a new audit right now, and they're going to talk about those two items. So I'm going to turn it over to AGH. Thank you.
Good afternoon. This is Mike Lowry with AGH, and again, Michelle is with us too. We thought we'd break this up into two parts. I'll start with a little bit of history as it relates to the audit and WAMPO, and then have Michelle talk about the status of the current audit, which Chair Dennis did mention that we have started on that this week. Just some brief history. I'm sure most of you are aware that the organization has struggled somewhat with its proper internal controls related to financial reporting. Currently, or as of the last year's audit, as I reported to the board, there were a number of material weaknesses related to segregations of duties, payrolls, grant funding as it relates to expenditures and procurement, and then some issues as it related to the ability to prepare the schedule of expenditures and federal awards. I will note that with all of those findings, part of the requirement during the audit is that management respond to those findings and prepare what we call corrective action plans. Last year, management did come up with what we believe are very good corrective action plans. The downside of that is we won't know to the full extent if those corrective action plans have been fully implemented until we are done with this year's audit. So we will be able to give you an update on the corrective action plans and the results of findings. Hopefully we will see some findings either go away completely or be less severe. The one challenge with an organization this size, it's a small organization, so I really doubt that the organization will be able to eliminate all control deficiencies, but hopefully we will get to a situation where any control deficiencies that are remaining, that there are good mitigating controls in place. And once the organization does a cost benefit analysis on those control deficiencies, we'll get to a point where the cost just doesn't outweigh the benefit, which is where we'd like to be. One of the most important things, and Chair Dennis alluded to this, to help with an organization that this small, is to have the governing body involved. And I know that they have formed an executive committee, and this can really help with the implementation of mitigating controls. So mitigating controls don't eliminate the control deficiency, but they can definitely lessen the severity. So when you have an executive committee or governing body that can step in to a small organization and kind of be those third set of eyes, that really does help. So I'm very encouraged to hear that there's an executive committee formed and that they're working monthly with management. So before I pass it over to Michelle, I will mention that we were asked by management to help them or assist in developing some monthly financial reports for the executive committee that are maybe a little more meaningful and help the governing body make good decisions and provide better governance. So we just had some initial conversations on that. So I don't really have much to report in that way, but I did want to let the board know that we are embarking on a project to help the organization develop some new monthly reporting that we think should help provide better information, which would lead to better governing decisions. So with that, I will turn it over to Michelle and let her give you an update on the current status of this year's audit.
Thanks, Mike. Like Mike mentioned, we have just started field work for the 2020 audit yesterday. So I don't have much to report at this point, but we have completed our planning and risk assessment processes. And actually, we have completed quite a bit of field work. I'm happy to report that management was well prepared. They've provided us all of the documents that we've requested so far, and they've been working hard on pulling samples. So the financial statement side is actually fairly near to completion the second day of the audit. That's fantastic. On the compliance audit side, we're still working through that. We are auditing the UPWP program, which is the same program that we've audited last year. So we do expect to be done with field work this week, and we will have reports available as soon as we get, like Mike mentioned, we'll need a corrective action plan from management for any control deficiencies that are remaining this year. So that will probably be the last thing that we'll need to wrap up the audit for this year.
And I wish we were in a place that we were ready to discuss last year's findings and what the results of those are this year, but we just aren't there yet with the audit. Hopefully in a week or two, we'll have some information to report in that manner, and we can always get with the executive committee at any time to discuss those. The process when we're evaluating prior control deficiencies and then evaluating any new control deficiencies that we may discover during the audit is to always draft a report for management so that they can review those to make sure that we do in fact have all of our facts straight and that we aren't missing something, because we want both sides to agree and come to a conclusion that the issue really is the issue. So we haven't even gotten to that point yet, but as soon as we have some information to report, we definitely will. So.
Mike and Michelle, I appreciate the update. We will stay on top of this. We don't want a report that looked like one here a couple years ago. And so both Councilwoman Tuttle and I and the entire executive committee will work with you with anything that you need to make sure that we get through this next one okay.
Sounds
Thanks.
great.
We appreciate it.
All right, have a good day.
You too. We'll move on to the next item. We have Andrew Nave with us from the Greater Wichita Partnership, and I will turn it over to Andrew.
One item, Mr. Chair.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Chad, thank you for having me. I don't know if you can let me share screen and I'll turn on my, there we go. Oh, there we go. We got a bunch of windows up here, so let me maximize this. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, Andrew, we can see your screen, yes.
Perfect, okay. Wanted to make sure I got that done correctly. I don't use GoToMeetings every day, but you would think after a year of this, I would have every one of these systems down pat. But afternoon to the TPB, happy to present on behalf of kind of industrial growth trends that we at the Greater Wichita Partnership are seeing. So I'll jump into it and leave some time for some questions for you all. Things I want to hit on today and what Chad asked me to kind of touch on from what we're seeing from industrial development, industrial growth. I think it would be helpful to put it in the context of the regional growth plan. I know this WAMPO body has, many of you have participated on the various committees of the partnership and public and private sector where we've talked about the regional growth plan, but want to kind of reframe that. And then I really want to share a little bit, kind of a call out of some of the key companies and kind of signature wins that we have across a variety of sectors. Won't hit, for interest of time, won't hit every sector, but do want to touch on a few, and then wrap up with some kind of recent economic development wins, and then a slide on some trends that we're seeing. But for I think most everybody on the calls and engaged pretty heavily in your public service and in the private sector, so I think everyone's familiar with the partnership. But just one slide to kind of orient you for the Greater Wichita Partnership, the regional economic development organization for the entire WAMPO area, and then even a little bit beyond that, stretching to a 10-county area. We focus on three things. You can see they're kind of the flywheel of what we think kind of economic development, what drives regional growth, or jobs, kind of the attraction of jobs, the expansion of jobs, and the creation of new jobs through entrepreneurship. And that's driven by the regional growth plan, which I'll touch on briefly. Quality of place, quality of life are so important to have those jobs be attracted to a location. And so that's driven by some of our downtown work and Project Wichita and having that distinctive place. And then obviously that attracts talent. Having that distinctive place attracts the talent that our companies and our organizations need. And so we have a plan called the Talent Marketing Blueprint that helps our team come alongside a number of the HR human resources teams across the region to help attract the best and the brightest talent to South Central Kansas. So the regional growth plan is, you can see, started in 2018. This plan was kind of the follow-on plan to the blueprint for regional economic growth, which many, again, on this call and public and private sector organizations led by Wichita State University started to launch in 2015 and 2016. So the regional growth plan updates that. It's a kind of a multifaceted, kind of targeted industry plan, but also looks at how do we drive initiatives from a regional standpoint that drives regional growth and economic growth. This year, because that plan was launched and kind of developed in the end of 17 and then 2018, obviously before the world changed, we have engaged a firm to help us do an addendum or kind of an update to the regional growth plan that's really looking at two things. One, the impact of COVID-19 and how that has changed kind of our business environment to the extent that we can know a year into that. Certainly there's unanswered questions, but we see certainly there are some trends with remote work, with industries that have expanded and grown over this last year and a half. So how can we maybe reprioritize or re-highlight some of the recommendations from the regional growth plan in light of COVID? The other thing that's happened since 2018 is we have come alongside the Kansas Department of Commerce. Our state has launched their comprehensive economic plan, and they call that the framework for growth. So that's the first time that the state of Kansas has had kind of a full-scale comprehensive economic strategy since the 1980s, believe it or not. And so our staff and our team and many organizations in our region were a part of their many months of analysis. They ended up engaging McKinsey and company to help them kind of find the best trends at the state level across the United States. And then COVID again kind of delayed the launch of that plan to some degree, but that was launched just a few months back by Governor Kelly and the Kansas Department of Commerce. And so there's some highlights in the framework for growth that we think are important to realign and maybe reprioritize our regional growth plan to maximize what the state is doing. We found a really good synergy and really good the way the plans complemented each other, but we really want to make sure that we're maximizing that. So that's what we're doing with our 2021 addendum to the regional growth plan. And we have a committee of the partnership called the Strategic Advisory Team, which some members of this body participate on, and we're going to be actually discussing that addendum here this next week. The regional growth plan, again, comprehensive economic development strategy. It's really built, or you can think of it across kind of 5 strategic pillars that are really important for, again, for good, sustainable, high quality economic growth. Building up a robust talent pipeline. We don't want to lose any of our talented professionals, and we need to attract, quite frankly, as the leading region and the largest region of the state, we need to be attracting talent from other states. So there's initiatives and key recommendations on how we can have a robust talent pipeline. Targeted innovation development. A lot of that innovation has to do with Wichita State University, but across our economy, how can we be more innovative and cutting edge? How do we market and attract to companies? So branding is a big part of that. There's specific recommendations of how we attract companies and how we attract attention. Catalytic infrastructure, certainly WAMPO, and we leaned on your staff at the time to kind of help give insight into how do we maximize our public infrastructure and private infrastructure, but mainly public infrastructure in the highest and best way, and then supporting existing businesses. So across those pillars, those kind of think of them as categories, there's 32 kind of key initiatives, key recommendations that were suggested in 2018. And again, we're wanting to update those for COVID and for what the state is looking at. But the other kind of thread that you could look at the regional growth plan is by industry, because any economy is built upon core industries. And this essentially what the lion's share of the regional growth plan is, a targeted industry plan. It's looking at what are our strengths, how do we maximize those, what are our weaknesses, maybe our deficiencies from an industry standpoint, and maybe trying to mitigate those. But we see and we feel very confidently that these kind of 7 icons represent kind of our 7 core industry sectors. And they're I think, fairly obvious for anybody that spent any time in Wichita. And they're certainly not all of the same scale or the same size in terms of employment or terms of economic impact. You know, trade and tariffs affect the value of a lot of these exported goods. But think of these primarily as exported goods, companies and industries that are bringing dollars into our regional economy as a general rule. But like healthcare is the second largest in terms of overall employment. So healthcare continues to be vitally important. Transportation and logistics is one of the fastest growing segments, and we'll talk a little bit about that. You can see under each icon is kind of a descriptor there, kind of plastics and composites, machinery and metalworking. Those are niche sectors that we've identified within that broader industry category, industry segment. We see niche opportunities to grow and kind of accelerate economic growth. And so within each of those bullet points underneath the graphics, we're trying to find companies and target companies in those niche spaces. I wanted to highlight just some kind of the marketing materials that we use as we're promoting and presenting South Central Kansas to companies. You can see one of the things we start with, and we talked often about, is the well-known brands or the well-known companies that call Wichita home. So hopefully you can see those across a variety of industries. We talk a lot about kind of our statistics and our rankings, and certainly we're the biggest industry segment that we're very proud of is aerospace. And you can see here that this rankings that come from Brookings Institute, which is a pretty good place to have some rankings from. It ranks our region as the #1 U.S. region for percentage of manufacturing workers. So that's a statistic that we hold out quite often to potential companies. But we talk about our aerospace heritage, with 39% of general aviation planes are built here in Wichita, and 450 supplier network. We use a lot of graphics to show and to tell that story about who some of those major brands are, but then even listing the depth of some of the other companies in the aerospace supply chain. So we talk a lot about aerospace, and it's certainly important to note that the way we sell into the aerospace segment, and when we talk about prospective companies that are looking for a new plant or a new location, a new warehouse, how we do that in aerospace is so different than any other sector, because we are one of 5 globally competitive aerospace clusters in the world. Anybody that's worked in aerospace for any length of time knows Wichita, has done a stint here, has at least come in here for business with what was Boeing or now Spirit or Textron. So they know our market really well. They know NIAR at Wichita State University. So it's a whole different kind of presentation and set of assets in aerospace than some of the other segments. One thing that I wanted to highlight for this body and this your conversations of kind of looking forward is what's going on at WSU with the smart factory. I know many of you as elected officials have heard some of this, but this was launched kind of in the early part of the summer, certainly in the middle of the pandemic. And so I don't know that Deloitte's story has been shared loud enough or well enough. But again, Deloitte, a big accounting firm, has chosen Wichita for what they're calling and branding their smart factory. It's kind of a smart factory of the future. It's right in the heart of the innovation campus. You can see there's kind of a rendering. It's actually a fully finished, or I say fully finished, fully built, fully constructed exterior building. The interior of the building is still being finished and being completed kind of as we speak. But this is right in the heart of the innovation campus, and Deloitte selected this out of the entire United States, where they did their analysis of where can we put kind of our showcase facility to highlight to our clients, global clients, of where they can do Industry 4.0. I mean, that's entirely what this facility is about. It's led by the Deloitte Industrial Consulting team out of Chicago. So they're trying to work with clients to make their manufacturing business. Certainly their accounting division and team members have their accounting and their audit services, but this consulting team is trying to win their book of business to help their manufacturing clients be more efficient and be more effective, be more innovative. And that's everything from reverse engineering to Internet of Things to AR and VR and robotics. And so they determined over the last couple of years they need a facility, kind of a showcase to do this. And they analyzed the country of where they could do it, what university could they partner with, could they do this in-house? And they determined that Wichita, largely based on the strength of NIAR and Wichita State University, is the perfect place to do this. So they're going to be, COVID again put a stop to it or a slow to it, but ultimately they're going to be bringing hundreds of companies of their clients through Wichita. This facility will have permanent Deloitte employees, a handful, I would say, of permanent employees. The real economic impact will be almost a tourism impact of bringing hundreds of companies through our community that are going to experience what they're wanting to show them and kind of their Industry 4.0 services. You can see their Infor, subsidiary of Koch Industries, is also an announced partner with them. So Infor is going to be doing the same thing. And they're going to be working kind of as almost as a playground for manufacturing experts and industrial engineers to kind of improve their process, improve their product, and to do that, to kind of give them a tangible experience for that, or to kind of show them how the robotics work or how additive 3D printing works. They're going to actually create for them during a 2 or 3 day experience a STEM education kit that client is going to get to take with them. And then there's going to be an additional STEM kit that's produced alongside that the Deloitte staff kind of produces in tandem with them, that they're going to be donating to Wichita 259 Public Schools. So really cool story that, again, I don't think it's gotten quite the fanfare that it really needs to. That's Deloitte's wanting to kind of work all the bugs out and get it launched this fall. But again, Infor is a partner with them. You will be seeing in the news cycle here soon several other, I would call them Fortune 100 or maybe even Fortune 50 companies that are going to be a part of this in some way, shape, or form. So an exceedingly exciting project. We've described it kind of internally that this could very easily be the economic development project of the decade in Wichita, a really impactful project for advanced manufacturing. Wanted you all to see some of the other sectors that we talk a lot about. IT is a growing sector, and something that we're trying to get the word out across organizations and to public leaders, elected leadership, is that we have a stronger tech community than what maybe people think. Certainly there's some of the big names in technology with NetApp off Rock Road or now on the Innovation Campus, and some growing companies like Keycentrix and Wolters Kluwer have been around for a while. But there's some really cool companies in Wichita that people don't really associate with technology. Cybertron Pc is a hardware computer manufacturer in South Wichita. They actually make one of the leading high-end esports gaming computers that all of our kids and nieces and nephews are playing now. One of the high-end esports gaming PCs is manufactured and produced in South Wichita, with not many people knowing that this happens right in our backyard. So there's a really cool story here in IT that we continue to tell, and it's starting to be seen around the country. In 2018, we ranked #1 in the United States for the growth of digital service jobs. So that story is starting to get out there. One of the groups that we help through the regional growth plan start to tell that story is FlagshipKansas.Tech. FlagshipKansas.Tech is a trade association for the Tech Association statewide, but has a huge presence and huge influence in Wichita. And so that's a group that we are trying to get the word out about, and they're doing some good work in IT. So would encourage you to check out FlagshipKansas.Tech as a trade association. I'm gonna move a little faster because I'm running short on time, but National Security Crossroads is a multi-state effort to attract more in technology and in innovation, but really to attract more defense industry assets into the middle part of the United States. So we, Wichita, are partnered up with the Kansas City area, all the way over to St. Louis and Missouri, up into Nebraska, and even Iowa a little bit, and all of the congressional delegations across those states to communicate and to convey that we are the national security crossroads. We are the place for the defense industry. There's a number of assets. Certainly, we're proud of what we have here with McConnell and what's going on at NIAR, but there's assets all across Kansas and Missouri that speak to this is a good place for the defense industry. So you'll see more and more about the national security crossroads and that branding initiative here in the coming months. And then even in logistics and freight, we have a number of some of the largest logistics and freight companies in the world, C.H. Robinson and YRC and others that have a presence. And so we have a stronger presence in logistics and distribution than maybe what some people might realize. To give you kind of some recent trends of what's happened kind of economic development wise, these are some of the companies that have announced new investment decisions in our region over the last year, some of them even in the warehouse distribution, logistics space, open road brands, kind of Eastern Wichita, Plains Cotton Cooperative. I didn't see if Mayor Usry was on the call today, but down in Clearwater, it's a large warehouse for a cotton cooperative association. So that's a new project. Obviously, Amazon gets a lot of the fanfare for in Park City and in Northeast Wichita. And then even this year, as we start the first quarter, there's been new companies and new announcements of companies coming in to the region. All-Tight Industrial Equipment and Industrial Servicing Company in Wichita, and then Millennium and Novaghost are two cybersecurity companies, so IT cybersecurity companies. That all three of these have created over 100 new jobs just in this year alone. This is some stats that we track, kind of our key metrics of projects. You can see there over the last couple of years, the number of jobs. Payroll is really important for us to track because that's a measure of wealth in our community and capital investment. And you can see the numbers there too for the kind of the 5 years history of the partnership, over 10,000 jobs, over $500 million in payroll and capital investment. So 3 trends I wanted to leave you with that we see from our vantage point of working with prospects, working with companies, evaluating Wichita and evaluating locations for a new site, is that large properties, large buildings are going to continue to be needed. So when we think of large, there's a lot of companies that fit in all shapes and sizes of buildings, but we need 100,000 square foot plus facilities, and having those available and ready to go. And not having merely, it's good to have an industrial site and a good business park, that's great. We need that as kind of the first step, but having ready to go buildings, especially Class A, we're getting more and more tilt wall construction, so higher construction grade of buildings that institutional investor is looking to invest in. So all of that trend I think will only continue. Because of COVID, we've seen a considerable increase in the number of food processing projects. My staff, looking at my numbers, we have about 8 food processing projects. Many of those spread across the region. Those aren't always just Wichita or Sedgwick County. Warehouse distribution projects are picking up in frequency as well. We have 13 warehouse distribution projects in our pipeline right now. All told, all of those together, those are obviously larger facilities, generally speaking. So if you were to add up all 13 of those, if we were to win them all, it's over 2 million square feet. About 160,000 square feet is the average warehouse distribution size building that we're working with at various stages. So that's a growing segment to us. And then within aerospace, we're seeing the aerospace industry will always be a strength for us and will continue to grow and expand. We're seeing some of the new kind of emerging segments of aerospace. We have 3 or 4 projects that are in the UAV, the unmanned aerial vehicles or unmanned aerial systems, or urban air mobility, UAM, for kind of air taxis or drones. We have a number of those projects that aren't kind of traditional fixed wing aircraft, but that is a new space for us. Hypersonic space. I know that folks from Derby were involved. We were chasing the U.S. Space Command headquarters. We knew that was a long shot, but something that we wanted to compete for given our aerospace heritage. And then just one more final acronym, because I know this is a WAMPO group and you don't know, you have to have at least a dozen acronyms per meeting. Maintenance, repair, and overhaul. That's the fastest growing segment of the aerospace industry. That's the service side of aerospace. That's where we build the plane the first time, we build that part, we manufacture it, and we ship it out to the customer. Well, after so many flight hours, that aircraft has to be maintained, it has to be repaired. And so we're working with at least a dozen projects that are the service side of aerospace, maintenance, repair, and overhaul. And that uses a lot of the same skill sets, a lot of the same talent that our general aviation, our manufacturers use. And so we're chasing that segment of aerospace from an industrial standpoint. So that's a quick depiction of kind of what we're seeing from an industrial standpoint. Chad, I know I took a couple minutes over what you allotted me, but hopefully that gives a good picture of what we're seeing from the Greater Wichita Partnership.
Andrew, thank you very much for that update. I know that a number of communities around here, including Sedgwick County and Wichita, are members of the Greater Wichita Partnership. One of the things that my previous Director of Public Works always said is that transportation is the mother's milk of economic development. And so working with Greater Wichita Partnership and WAMPO, they're very important partners. So thank you very much for that update. Does anyone have any of Andrew before we let him go? I don't see anything, but Andrew, once again, thank you very much for the update. We'll move on to item 5A, Executive Committee Report. And I will try and get through this fairly rapidly today because we're already kind of over time. But we had the Executive Committee here a couple of weeks ago. One of the things that we went over is, as you know, that Chad's been with us for a little while. We went through his evaluation and we provided a copy of his evaluation to him. I have signed the copy that I made, and we appreciate exactly what Chad's doing. We brought him in to help us move forward, to correct some of the problems that we were having in several areas, and he is doing a great job with that. And we want to thank him very much for what he's doing for WAMPO. The other thing that we talked about during the Executive Committee is budget, and that is something that is very important, and we'll be discussing that probably at each one of the Executive Committee meetings as we move forward, because we have to know exactly where we're at with the funding that we've got available. One of the things that we looked at with the last update that he gave us with the budget is we believe we're in a position now where that we can fill a couple of the positions that he's asked for. And so the executive committee went ahead and approved him advertising 2 positions. These are lower pay rate positions than the ones that we had eliminated here recently. But what I wanted you to know is that we are advertising right now for 2 new positions. Another thing that we talked about, and I won't go into any detail because we've already discussed it, but we went through the audit and where we were at with that, and we will continue to do that as part of the executive committee meeting. I appreciate the city reports, and we talked about that. Now we've gone through 2 of the city reports. With reports like we received from Derby and Mays, along with what we got from the Greater Wichita Partnership, that shows what kind of projects that we need to be looking at in the future for funding from WAMPO. So I think those are important, and we will continue those. One of the things I asked Chad to take a look at is whether or not that we can start looking at going back and start having some of our meetings more in person rather than remotely. We currently have 45 people on this meeting right now. We were up to 50 a few minutes ago. We can only have 15 up where that we normally hold the meeting because of COVID. So we were thinking about the possibility of having maybe some hybrid models, and we will talk that over a little bit with our executive committee and see what we want to do. But unfortunately, with us only being able to get 15 into that room, we may have to stay remotely just a little bit longer, but we are talking about it. So if anyone has any ideas about what we need to do about how that we meet, please let me know. But obviously people are interested in these, or we wouldn't have 45 people on right now. So that is a quick update of the executive committee meeting. I'll ask our vice chair, Becky Tuttle, if I missed anything at all.
I think you got it all. Thank you, Chairman.
Very good, thank you. We'll move on, and do we have an active transportation report from Alan or Jack today?
Yes, thank you. This is Alan Kaler. One of the first things that Dan Squires mentioned in his presentation about Derby was the connection of the bike paths all the way from Wichita down to Mulvane. I've been on those, and those are great routes. Those are great to have. The main thing that we're looking at in the Active Transportation Committee is how to connect the entire region with similar projects. And in particular, right now, we're in the phase of similar to what you did at this meeting, hearing from the different communities about what their plans are. So then we can work from that to how best to connect the different communities. We had presentations from Derby and from Wichita last month. Our next meeting is at the beginning of June, and we'll have some presentations from a couple of more meetings, a couple of more communities. And we'll probably be reaching out to you or representatives of your different communities for presentations at future meetings. So welcome to, we'd love to have your participation in the Active Transportation Committee meeting, as I said, at the beginning of June, and look forward to hearing more presentations. Thanks.
Super, Alan, I appreciate the update. Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, Tom Hine, are you on still?
I am.
Very good, go ahead.
I have the local Kdot report, and as Andrew Nave pointed out in his industrial growth trends slide, there is the need for an efficient transportation system to fuel this growth and help it along. And Kdot's doing our part. We've got a number of projects in place right now, including the green project up on the north end of I-235. The gold project, the accelerated phase called 2A, phase 2A, has begun just in the last few weeks. And that is the North Junction first phase that really addresses the problems at the North Junction. So that is exciting to get that going. That is a 3-year project, and it started now, so it's running during that last year of the green project on I-235, and design plans are progressing on the rest of the gold project, and then there's another phase after that even that will be the total fix for the North Junction. So a lot of years of construction work up there to make that a more efficient feature for this industrial growth that we see happening. We've also still got the northbound I-135 bridge repair project that goes every weekend and into Wednesday. We are replacing a bridge on I-235 on the south end of town over by West Street. We have east side, we have some K96 repairs, pavement repairs that we'll pick up again this spring. In fact, we have a lot of projects that will begin this spring and summer. So you'll see a lot of cones out there this year, and we think that's a good thing. We are maintaining that infrastructure as best we can. We have a new project that will start soon on US 54 on both sides of Goddard and through Goddard. So it's a new area that we haven't worked on for a while. And then, of course, we've got some work down on K15 and South Wichita and Derby area. So we've got a lot of things going on, and we look for a lot more projects to pick up in the next month or two. So watch for those cones, watch for those work zones, and always buckle up and slow down in those work zones. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tom. I know that this region sincerely appreciates the partnership with Kdot. There's a lot going on, as you mentioned. There's a lot looking at in the future. We appreciate your partnership very much. And speaking of Kdot, we'll move on to the Kansas side. Mike Moriarty, are you available?
I am, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I do have a personnel update from Topeka. Kdot has created 2 new bureaus to help bolster our service delivery in both the safety and technology spaces. The Bureau of Transportation Safety, again, has been created to kind of help amplify Kdot's safety focus. So this team will be headed by Vanessa Platt. Vanessa is new to Kdot, but she's not new to the transportation scene in Kansas. She has worked as a consultant around the state past several years. She's coming back to Kansas actually from the Phoenix area. So we are excited to have her on board, and I know she'll do some great things in the safety space. In addition to that bureau, the Bureau of Transportation Technology has also been established by the Secretary. This team will be led by Sherry Hilliard. Sherry is kind of a long-standing ITS engineer here at Kdot. She's definitely considered to be a national authority with regards to the transportation technology. Personally, I've worked with her on several projects, and she certainly is at the top of this game. So again, we're excited to have these 2 new teams. We're thrilled to have both Vanessa and Sherry in leadership roles. I do have one other item, Mr. Chair. I think it'd be advantageous for Kdot, USDOT, and WAMPO to further discuss the legality of citizen membership on WAMPO TPB. And with your permission, I'd like to ask my team to work with Chad and get something scheduled, again, to further kind of talk about this topic.
We can certainly do that. I appreciate it. Any questions for Michael? Anything else, Michael?
No, sir.
Very good. Federal Highway Administration, Matt, are you on?
Rick Backlund's on. Good afternoon, everyone.
Go for it. Thank you.
Sure. Afternoon, everybody. Just a couple of updates. First off, in terms of the department, I'm sure that all of you have been seeing infrastructure proposal has been submitted by, or is being vetted by our administration working with Congress. So we're hopeful that that will produce a concrete program for us moving forward for, frankly, federal fiscal, the rest of this fiscal year. And we're hoping that that will bode well towards reauthorization, which the FAST Act expires at the end of this year. Personnel announcements, we still have Barbara Maley from the Texas Division providing planning support. Barbara is definitely a seasoned planner, worked in many MPOs. In terms of filling our planner vacancy, we have conducted interviews and we're doing further personnel vetting, but I'm hopeful that we'll be able to announce something soon on a selection. Otherwise, that's all that I have, with the exception of the comment made by like Moriarty, I think it would be good for us to have a further dialogue about the legality and do a little bit more talking with you guys about that. So in terms of the citizen participation. So
Very good, Rick. Thank you very much. And while we're talking about the federal side, last Friday I talked to Congressman Estes, and he said that there's a committee that's looking at some funding. They have got a very short suspense. Monday, I got additional information that I sent out to WAMPO over to the Transportation Coalition Committee, where that he has a suspense, Congressman Estes, of April 23rd, for us to get some items back that he may be able to personally try and help us with some transportation items in this area. So we are working those. It's kind of just learned about it and a very short suspense as we're moving forward. So I want to let you know that we are looking at some federal things through Congressman Estes' office.
yeah, it's an exciting time to be in federal transportation right now. So definitely.
Very good. Does anyone have any questions on any of the items that we just discussed? Seeing none, we'll move to item 6, other business. Does anyone have anything to bring up under other? Seeing nothing, well, I thank everyone for joining us today for the WAMPO meeting and for the attendee audience. There's a lot going on in transportation, as Rick just said. So thanks for everything that everyone is doing. With that, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.